I'm not the biggest fan of personality tests. I think I said that last time. I am who I am and I just don't care. I still think it's interesting once in a while to see if these things can send you in any new directions or give you new avenues to consider, and that's really what we're doing around here today. Plus, I just wanted to get away from religion for a moment, and there we go. So let's get back to it. Welcome to part two of the test, and this time we're going to finish up the questions while skipping past a whole ton of repetitious nonsense and get to what it all means. That's kind of the point after all. So we get back to the questions, and you get to see my answers and my explanations because nobody should actually answer any questions without some kind of rational justification for it all. And then we'll see where I fall on their scale. Fun, right? So, to start off with, there were a whole long list of questions that were just repetitions of things we already answered last time. So, if that keeps up, this video might not be that long, but that's what you get when you walk into this stuff blind. So, here's the first question that I think is actually worth addressing. Rarely notices the emotional aspects of paintings and pictures. Well, as I already said in the last video, I'm not really a huge fan of art for the sake of art. Uh, this one asks if I notice the emotional aspects, and yes, I do notice them. I just don't really care that much. I mean, it's largely the point of art, after all, to appeal to the emotions, and most of the time I don't really care about that. There's a time and a place, and it's not all the time in every place. So, yes, I notice. I just often don't give a crap. So, moving on. Am easily discouraged? Nope, not at all. It really takes a lot to get me down, and I usually bounce back pretty quickly if something does. Sometimes it's hard not to get discouraged. I mean, look around you. But generally speaking, I'm more apt to get a chuckle out of it than I am to get upset because I've already come to grips with the fact that in many cases, I can't directly do anything about it anyhow, so why worry about it? So, in this particular case, strongly disagree. Am not a very enthusiastic person. Well, that depends. There are plenty of things that I get very, very enthusiastic about, and plenty that I don't. And I think that's pretty normal. I'm just not like some people that you see that get an overwhelming desire to do any one thing in particular because I'm not at all fanatical. I have what I've heard described as a non addictive personality, and that means that there's nothing that I fixate on to the exclusion of all else. There's a lot of things that I like, but I'm not a fanatic about any of them. I don't constantly think about anything or focus exclusively on any particular interest to the exclusion of all others. But when I'm doing anything, I am enjoying it and I am enthusiastic about it. So there's your answer. Have a rich vocabulary. Well, yes, I do. I try to keep it toned down for the channel, but yesterday I was talking to somebody online and they asked if I was a professional writer, and if not, I ought to be. Well, yeah, kinda, but that's not really relevant at this point. I grew up reading at a very, very advanced level. I was reading at a college level when I was in like fourth or fifth grade, which is really neither here nor there, but it puts this into some kind of context. It's just kind of annoying to run around using big words for no other reason than you can, so I generally don't do it. I mean, sometimes, but not usually. I mean, there are plenty of people who do, I'm just not one of them. Insult people. I just had to put this one in here. Yes, I do, sometimes, but for a reason. It isn't to build myself up or tear anybody else down. It's to point out the stupidity that a lot of people seem to revel in. If you don't want to be called stupid, don't be stupid. It's not really an insult, it's an accurate descriptor. And I figure that people who won't respond to reason, they might respond to insults. A lot of them don't, but it's a hope. If you don't want to be called an idiot, maybe you should think about your actions so as to avoid it. Ultimately, it's just calling a spade a spade. It's like saying nice doggy while reaching for a stick without bothering with the nice doggy part. Why lie about it? If they are dumb, call them dumb, because maybe in calling them dumb, you might help them to get a little smarter. Need a creative outlet? Well, generally speaking, yes. I mean, YouTube in and of itself is a creative outlet, so is my blog, so are a lot of my other hobbies that I have, etc., etc., etc. I enjoy making stuff. I enjoy thinking about stuff. In fact, it's actually pretty hard most of the time to turn off my brain. I usually have a hard time going to sleep at night because it just won't shut up. Therefore, I'm always doing stuff, and even if I'm just sitting there watching TV or playing a video game, I'm still constantly getting up and getting stuff done as I think about things that I ought to be doing. So, yes, creative stuff, absolutely. Moving on. Always know what I'm doing. Yeah, generally speaking, I do. Now, some people might disagree on some things, but no, I'm pretty sure I do. People ask how I know how to do so many things. Well, I just try things. If I want to get something done, I will just give it a shot. I learn on my own. Sometimes I'll ask an expert or watch a YouTube video, but mostly I just look at things and figure it out. I'm very good at taking stuff apart and figuring out how to put it back together. This was a long time ago, at least like 35 years ago, when I took my car into the shop to have the brakes done. And the tech had no clue at all how to take apart drum brakes. And I'll be honest, drum brakes suck. But I went in and I showed him how to do it. And the only reason I actually took it in at all was because I was having other stuff done. And honestly, as I said, I hate doing drum brakes because they're really fiddly and obnoxious, but I can do disc brakes all day long. In fact, I just replaced them on my wife's car last week, but drum brakes, I hate them. I hate them. You got to make a lot of adjustments. It's a pain in the ass. Anyway, it's worth it for me sometimes to let other people deal with the hassle, and that's kind of the point of that story. So, yeah, I usually have a clue. Thanks. Hold back my opinions. Yeah, never. Now, that doesn't mean that I throw down on anybody that I come across that I disagree with. That's kind of a waste of time. I'm not going to hear someone saying something about God in public and just launch into some diatribe about how irrational the whole thing is. I'm not rude to anybody who hasn't asked for it. Usually, I'm not the one that brings these things up, but I don't back down when people initiate the conversation. If you don't want to hear what I have to say, don't ask. And that goes for absolutely everything, not just religion. Don't ask me if that dress makes you look fat, unless you want my honest opinion, because I am painfully honest. I'm really not interested in lying to people for the sake of their fee-fees. Keep that in mind. Rarely get lost in thought. Well, I guess that depends on what you mean by lost. Do I forget where I am? No, that doesn't happen, but my mind is always going and I'm always thinking about stuff. In fact, when I was younger, I used to play this mental game where I'd take the most recent thought that I had, real train of consciousness stuff, mind you, and then try to remember what it was that led to it. And then what led to that, and back as far as I could go, thought after thought after thought. I was thinking about this, which led to this, which led to this, which led to this, and on and on and on. And trust me, it's not as easy as you think, especially when you get back a ways, because short-term memory doesn't last that long. So I'm always thinking, not always about the most rational stuff, but I'm always thinking, but I'm never blissfully unaware of my surroundings because of it, so take that as you will. Don't have a soft side. Well, I do. I just save that for people who are important to me in my life. My wife would tell you that. I bend over backwards to do things for the people that I care about. That probably doesn't come out online very much, but if you knew me in the real world, you'd know that I'm always there for everybody that I know, so I guess I strongly agree. Have a lot of fun. Well, I do. I mean, I'm generally positive offline, maybe not so much online, but really offline, I'm a ball of fun. I enjoy what I do, and I try to do my best to make sure that the people that I'm with enjoy their time as well. That's the thing. It's not really any fun being around people who are miserable, so I try not to be miserable myself, and I try to make sure other people aren't either. I have a good time doing for others because I enjoy making other people happy, at least the people who deserve it. And when it comes to the religious, I'd love for them to be rational. I really would. They're not, and I understand why they're not, but I'm not here just trying to blow smoke up their skirt because I want them to be happy, because that's stupid. You gotta earn happiness, and maybe they ought to give that one a shot. See that rules are observed. Well, mostly, yes, at least the rules that I think warrant it. I mean, there's a lot of really stupid laws out there that I think need to be changed and need to be challenged. But depending on the specific instances, I may not advocate for them and I may not personally follow them, but I know full well that there are going to be consequences for doing that, and I accept that. I mean, here's an example. Ferrets are illegal in California where I live. It's stupid because there are more pet ferrets in California than anywhere else in the country. And last I looked, I think that was combined. I've had ferrets over the years. I just drive out to Nevada, pick one up in any pet store and just come back with it. Hell, every single pet store in the state carries ferret food and every exotic vet sees ferrets. It's a completely nonsensical law. Way back in the day, the biggest ferret advocacy group in the world was based in California. I don't know if that's still true, but, screw that law. In fact, screw California. Fuck Sacramento. Let's go that far. Fuck these people. Like to do things for others. Well, I've already addressed this. I love to do things for people. In fact, I've done some really crazy things for people. I had a friend, and this has been at least 20 years now, who her husband was abusing her, and she lived in Oregon. I jumped on a plane, paid out of my own pocket, flew to Oregon, packed her, her son, and all of her stuff into her truck, drove back to California, put her ass up for a couple of months in my own house, just because she was in need, because she was a friend. No compensation at all. It was just, she needed me. I was there. There you go. This kind of stuff happens. I love to help people who are in need and who deserve my help. If you don't get it. But if you do, hell yes you do. I am out for my own personal gain. Well, that's obviously not the case. If it was, I'd be pushing donations around here nonstop. Like in the last question, I'm trying hard to do things to earn your support, but I don't push it regardless. If you want to, fine, great, fantastic, I appreciate it. If not, that's fine too. Clearly, there are lots of people out there who are doing this for personal gain, namely the religious, but I'm not one of them. I view this as a public service. Watch it or don't. Donate or don't. I'm not going anywhere no matter what. So anyway, that was the last question of the quiz. So let's get on to the end, which is where we're going to spend most of our time in this video. Questions are great, but what does it all mean? Here's the first graph, and there are a lot of graphs that we're going to go through. Unfortunately, I couldn't get the top part of the screen, so, the important part is at the bottom anyway, so what difference does it make? So anyway, we've got openness to experience at 90, conscientiousness at 98, extroversion at 96, agreeableness at 32, and neuroticism at 3. So we're going to go over each of those in turn. Let's get to it. Trait breakdown. It explains that each individual trait can be further breakdown. I think they mean broken down into two major aspects. In the case of openness to experience, I get 97 in intellect and 54 in openness. Before we even get into the explanation on the next screen, though, I'd say that sounds pretty reasonable to me. I'm not open to stupid crap, so yeah, that wouldn't count. I have no idea what any of that means in terms of the test, but let's go take a look. Openness to experience is the primary dimension of creativity, artistic interest, and intelligence, particularly verbal intelligence, in the Big Five personality trait scientific model. Openness to experience is a measure of interest in novelty, art, literature, abstract thinking, philosophy, as well as sensitivity to aesthetic emotions and beauty. Okay, that explains it. As I said, I'm not all that interested in art for the sake of art. I like art, but not just because it's there. I also don't care that much about novelty just because it's novel, although I don't remember any questions on that specifically. So let's continue. People with moderately low levels of openness to experience tend to be more conventional, conservative people. Well, that doesn't work out because I'm a conservative and my score is 90. It says that conservatives are less known for their curiosity or interest in novelty or change. But that doesn't describe me at all, so this isn't working out that well. It goes on and says they don't engage in abstract questions or consider philosophical issues, which, again, that doesn't describe me at all. This is really starting to look like they got it all completely wrong, at least when it comes to me. I'm not going to go through all of this. You can pause the video if you really want to read it. And I know that's a lot of really tiny print, which might make it difficult, but that's what there is. Apparently, they don't care much about people with bad eyesight. It says that liberals politically have much higher openness to experience levels, which, knowing what we know, that seems pretty absurd. I mean, there's only 10 points above me, and I am not remotely liberal. So this doesn't look good, but let's move on anyhow. Conscientiousness. Both traits, industriousness and orderliness, are about the same, 96 and 94 respectively. Now, before we get to the explanation, I'm curious if I'm going to completely disagree with their take, like happened with the first part. I guess the only way to know for sure is to get on to the next screen, so away we go. Conscientiousness is the primary dimension of dutiful achievement in the Big Five personality trait scientific model. Conscientiousness is a measure of obligation, attention to detail, hard work, persistence, cleanliness, efficiency, and adherence to rules, standards, and processes. Conscientious people implement their plans and establish and maintain order. Yeah, okay, I can buy that. I have a solid work ethic and I get things done, which is why I've been as successful as I have. Individuals who are typically conscientious do not react too negatively to failure. They can let themselves off the hook and tend not to be too judgmental about their own faults or those of others. Well, that's actually not very accurate. I mean, I'm really negative to my own failure. If you don't recognize what you do wrong, how can you hope to do better in the future? I am very clearly critical of others' failures. I mean, I wouldn't be doing this channel if I wasn't, so pointing out dumb stuff is kind of what I do. Not really that accurate, at least not in the second part. Now let's get on to extroversion. The two traits are enthusiasm, where I got an 81, and assertiveness, where I got a 98. The problem here is that I'm not really naturally extroverted. I mean, I grew up being very, very introverted. I had to learn how to be outspoken. I wouldn't say I'm really comfortable with it. I do it because it needs to be done, but it's not something that's just there naturally. So I don't really know that I fit into the standard definition of introversion or extroversion. I'm neither emotionally weakened nor strengthened by having other people around. Having dumb people around, yeah, that sucks, but I'm just fine with having smart, rational, fun people and spending time with them. I don't really look forward to it or dread it. It just is what it is. So let's get on to the explanation. Extroversion is the primary dimension of positive emotion. Yeah, all right, we hear that a lot. I'm going to skip that part. Extroversion is a measure of general sensitivity to positive emotions such as hope, joy, anticipation, and approach, particularly in social situations. Well, that's a little bit different than what I was thinking before. I'm not sure about the wording as it casts extroversion as a positive trait and presumably introversion as a negative trait, and I don't agree with that at all. The extremes on both sides are questionable, but I don't think they're really negative. So, anyway, let's continue. People with moderately high levels of extroversion are quite enthusiastic, talkative, assertive in social situations, and gregarious. So, maybe I'm not reading it right, I don't know, but it really seems like they are favoring one over the other, and except in the extremes, I don't really see where there's anything wrong with either one. Now, at the bottom, it says that the average score for men is 48, and I got a 96, which again seems way out of proportion, but for the moment, we're just going to let all that go. Now we're on to agreeableness, which is separated into compassion and politeness. And that's probably about right because I'm not really concerned about being polite. I am hopelessly honest. If you're doing something dumb, I'm going to tell you that you're doing something dumb. And if you're doing something good, I'm going to tell you that too. Giving my opinion isn't a problem. So let's go on and see what those two things mean. Agreeableness is the primary dimension of all right. Repetitive, aren't they? They're just copying and pasting. Anyway, people high in agreeableness are nice, compliant, nurturing, kind, naively trusting, and conciliatory. Well, then it's a good thing I didn't score very high in this because that is not me. With a score of 32, I think that's probably about accurate because I don't really care about being nice. You know, the old George Carlin, he's so nice. No, I'm not. I'm also not compliant, and I'm certainly not naively trusting, and I don't avoid conflict just for the sake of doing so. There are plenty of things worth fighting over. So far, I'd say this sounds pretty accurate. People with very low levels of agreeableness are seen by others as markedly competitive, colder, tougher, and very much empathetic. Kinda, sorta, maybe, I don't know. Then at the bottom it says that women tend to go into teaching and nursing professions while men tend to go into technological professions, which certainly is the case here, so that at least they got that right. I'd say that people ought to be less agreeable, generally speaking, because that's really the only way to get to honesty, and that's the only way to make things change. So let's get into that last category. Neuroticism. It's split into volatility and withdrawal, and I have virtually no score in either. And that's fine because I'm not neurotic. So let's go into the explanations because this is already getting pretty long. Neuroticism is the primary yada yada yada, whatever. Neuroticism is the measure of general sensitivity to negative emotions such as pain, sadness, irritable, or defensive anger, fear, and anxiety. Well, I got none of that. It kind of makes me wonder if you could separate fundamentalist and evangelical Christians, just how high their neuroticism score would be since their beliefs are based primarily on fear. Anyway, people with low levels of neuroticism rarely focus on the negative elements, anxieties, and uncertainties of the past, present, and future. It is rare for them to face periods of time where they are unhappy, anxious, and irritable unless facing a serious, sustained problem. Okay, I'll agree with that. I don't get depressed, certainly not long term. Now, I will recognize stupid stuff that's going on, but I don't dwell on it unless it's something that I can personally do anything about. It's one reason I just don't focus much on politics anymore because no matter which way you lean, you're pretty screwed. Essentially, this says that low neuroticism individuals keep their head in a storm, don't make mountains out of molehills, and have higher levels of self-esteem, particularly when they have a high extroversion score. They don't get anxiety disorders or depression. So, yeah, I'd say that sounds pretty accurate. So, that was the test. And really, in my opinion, this test has been kind of a mixed bag. Some things I agree with and some I don't. It would be interesting to know how any of this correlates with religiosity, as I said, although they don't ask about any of that, so you can't get those figures. You'd probably get some really high neuroticism scores and low agreeableness scores with some of the people who are terrified that an imaginary man in the sky is going to get them and thinks everybody around them is a filthy sinner. That said, though, hopefully you all learned something today, both about me and, if you took the test yourself, about yourselves. I don't know how much of this you ought to take to heart, but if it helps, and if not, hey, forget about it. So let me know in the comments what you thought, either about specific questions or about your own test results. Where did you fall on the scale? Post that below if you'd like, or don't. That's entirely up to you. Anyway, we're going to get back to laughing at the religious next time. I think I've taken enough time off and I'm ready to face the irrational stupidity again. And that's really kind of a sad thought, isn't it? That you can actually look forward to that. Maybe I ought to just go lay down for a while because I think I might be getting a fever.
Bum